Okay, let's go like this. Here we go. Okay. Now things are going to get very interesting here because I'm completely confused, but we'll see. HaMitzvah Ashmona v'chamishim. He shehizhirnu milira min hakofrim b'eis hamilchama. Just before we try to understand words, each word by itself, ushelo nivrach mipneim. So a priori, when you read this, and I guess that's the pshat, that there are two things going on. There's the yira, and then the pachad. That yira and pachad, the person acts on it and runs away. So you have to know the steps. The question where both are also, and the question is, so what difference does it make if you know? If it's also to have yira, so you don't act on it, okay, this becomes a lav sheyesh bo ma'aseh malchut. But that's what it says. It's not prior to the mlchama, it's b'shas mlchama, and it's shalom nivrach mibneihem. Al v'choiva oleinu lihis gaber v'la'amoid ulihis chazek kineged homa acher, that we should be kivesh this sense of lira and pachat, and then you see it doesn't say lis chazik kineged or omazeh, and I guess and not run away. Lis gaber v'la'amoid was yislenu. So you have to read avochayvo lenu lis gaber v'la'amoid, and not to go back. Lis chazik kineged ha'om ha'acher. 1 second. Let's see how he does it. Kapach. Yeah. Milio as a kefrim, based on mulcham mularetz mipeneim. That's to go backwards, I assume. Avochayvo la'ametz halei. See, according to Kapach is better. Lamutz halei, es halei. That means to control the pachad. And then he has after that, control the pachad, he says, so this is much better. Kapach, the translation is much better. Because you get the parallel structure between the two things. There's the yira itself and the acting on the yira to running away. Okay? So that's what you see in the negative and the positive. And this chov oleinu is going to be very interesting. Okay, so let's go slowly. So the first thing that catches our eyes is that the Rambam describes the mitzvah, the ashara, as hashara to have yira from kefrim. It means those that deny das ha'emes, or whatever you want to call it. You see, the question is, I don't know if we talked about this, I might have mentioned it again, but here it's certainly very clear. Hillman, in his Tziyunim to Frankel, says it's labadavka. But I thought that maybe it is badavka. And
of the freedom of disease campaign.
Indeed. Well, in Hebrew we say
ukidvorov b'minyan hamitzvos. Where does he say it? Minyan hamitzvos, the mitzvos mashuach mlchama. He says that the kohen mashuach is mochiach that tzavo lilchaim neged hakofrim b'das emes. And he says, if you look at over there, it's a mitzvah, I think, Kufsari Aleph. And then he says something amazing, which is not Mishnah Torah. V'yosef ze ma'amorim, ye'oru ha'am l'mulchama, ויובילים להסתכן בנפשם, לעזור דס הוקל, ולשומו לנוקים מן השכלים, some might translate, some that might be koflim, bo hamafsidin yoisha medinas. And even Eov over there translates that it's linoke min ha-koflim, bo hamafsidin yoisha emes. So you could have said that what the Rambam is doing over there, that's a yes or say. It's like the rabble-rousing speech, and you don't really need koflim. But if there's koflim, it's more of a rabble-rousing speech. You get them more excited. This Isafah is only if there are koflim there. So that could explain the mitzvah say kufsari aleph why he uses koflim there. But over here, that the whole Yira, he seems to say, is only from koflim. And at the end, he has a line which also gets one to think. And he says, the end of the thing, he says, Ushlo yashuv la'ocho be'esam l'cho v'k'be'inyan zeh efshel l'kayim emunas ha'emes. So it means this whole idea of Yira is to stand up for the religion of God. Okay. So I'm not sure how you explain it if you say the koflim was labadafta, the whole discussion. You see, the problem is, let's even say like this, this based on milchama, and we'll see. Question is, what type of milchama are we talking about? So, a priori, the Rambam is not machalik, it is hey milchamis mitzvah, hey milchamis rishus. So, what's lium and akeflim if it's milchamis rishus? Milchamis mitzvah, maybe zayin amim, because the keflim or the amolek, ches, koitim, ches. But if it's tam milchama, you see, I think I mentioned this last week, if Lamaisi is, we're talking about, as the Rambam presents it in Perek Aleph of Hilchos of Hilchos Malachim, Perek Aleph Halacha Aleph, that and Perek Hey Halacha Aleph, that the Hilchos Malachim Malchama is in Perek Hey Halacha Aleph, that the purpose of Malchama is to extend the borders and the legadol shamoy of the melech. It's not a religious war, but the way the Rambam is phrasing it over here, you get the impression that it's a religious war, which is a very, very interesting thing. So let's take a step backwards, slowly but surely. We'll get to each part of the mitzvah, but there are things going on here which, frankly, I'm surprised about. So the Rambam assumes there's a lot of minyan mitzvahs. What happens is, comes the Ravid in the Hasogas to minyan mitzvah kotzer, loisa here, this loisa ser, and also the Ramban in the Hasogas to this mitzvah says that this is not an ashara, it's only a haftocha. And then the word lo doesn't mean a don't. It's not a tzivui, it's a shlila. You will not be afraid. You will not count. You will not be afraid of minyan mitzvahs. That's what Shiur Shmini is about. The Shiur Shmini, we only count tzivuyim and not a shlila. An aftocha and a shlila is not a tzivui. The Ramban even asks more there in the Hasogas over here. V'im minihi. So you see, the Ravid is, it's a done deal. It's a double portion that it's a haftocha and not a tzivu or an ashora or miniya. The Ramban is ready to entertain that it's a miniya. And that's what he says. He says, I'm ready to accept that, but then the things don't make sense. Lo yosifu hashoitrim v'yoimu mi ho'ish hayore v'rach alevo she'ovo halav. Because if he's rach v'yore levo, he's violates the lav. So it's like, who violates the law? That's how Ramban learns it. So he raises his hand. So you want the person, that's what you're doing, that a person who violates the law, that will mavayish in barabim. That's what he asks, the Ramban. V'yoimu mi oish hayorev rach alevo she'ova halav yifasim chetoi. He puts a placard on himself and says, I violated the law. But you see one thing from this question, Ramban, that the law is prior to war. Because here, the Kohen Gadol and the Shoitrim are just giving, just deciding who's going to go out to fight and who's not going to go out to fight. So it's a very clear thing. And it's before the war. But if you look again at the Ram says, HaMitzvah hashmone v'chamishim hi shezhirnu miliro min akrefim bi'es hamilchama. So it's Chuvasoi Besida that the Ram clearly says that the Ashora is not prior to the Milchama, so the Kasha is no Kasha. The Ramban assumes that Mi or Ish or Yor Lav Alevo, Rach Alevo, and the Lav is already, if there is a Lav, it's already then. The Ram says no. So I'm not sure, it's not a great, in the Ramban's reference, okay. But the Rambam, I'm not sure if there's a Kasha over here. And the truth is, the interesting thing, not only the Ramban is not sure how they read the Rambam, but the Minchas Chinuch and Klemetz HaMincha in Mitzvah Kuf Tav Kuf Chav Hey or Is Aleph is poshut that the Lab is Noeg Terem Milchama, which to me is amazingly it doesn't seem to say that in Rambam. And Mishnah Torah, you have to understand, it's not only here, it's in Mishnah Torah, in Protei HaMitzvos, in Hilchos Malachim Mulchamas. He says, Shelo la'aretz v'lachzor la'ocho b'shas hamilchama. So it's not an issue of translation, Arabic, not Arabic. The Rambam says it very clearly. And the Rambam in Hilchos Malachim Mulchamas, the Rambam says it's only after they enter, the war starts, or they're in battle. In Perek Zayin Halacha Tesvav, Mi hoish hayore v'rach halevo ki mashmoro she'ein b'libo koyach lamod kishre b'kishre ha-milchama u'me'acha she'yikonesh b'kishre ha-milchama yishon al mikveh Yisrael u'moishiyoi. You have a toch on a color be'esoro v'yeda shal yichor Hashem hu oisem milchama. This is also interesting. Al yichor Hashem hu oisem milchama. V'yosim nafshi b'chapoy v'lo yira v'lo yifachei v'lo yachshev v'lo b'ishtoi v'lo b'bono v'lo shelo yimche zichreino miliboy v'yifne mikol dvar dovel ha-milchama v'chol ha-maskil lachshoy v'lahager b'milchama u'mevahel atzmoy u'mavhil atzmoy loivo b'lo yisaseh. So here it's very clear that the Ram Shita is that it's b'shas milchama. and the Chazor, the Achalevov, is before the Lav. So I found that Rabbi Yucham Perlau noticed this in his Biur Sefer HaMitzvos Lav Lo Yisaseh Kuf Chaf Tes. Now, it's interesting that, okay, well, I think this is premature. We'll come back to this. This issue about the lav, what parts of the lav's from. Just want to add one thing in this quote that the Rambam has that I read to you in Perek Zayin Halacha Tesvav. There's something very interesting going on, and he says, and this is, I think, it certainly touches on what we discussed at the beginning of this year. The Rambam says, Yishoyin al mikveh Yisrael u'Moshiach be'esoro v'yeda shal yichud Hashem u'esem l'cham. It's an amazing thing. What do you mean yichud Hashem u'esem l'cham? What do you mean yichud Hashem? If you learn, like the Rambam, that all the Milchamas are about Kefrim that deny yichud Hashem, so I understand al yichud Hashem u'esem l'cham. But I would have said that the Rambam Mishnah Torah doesn't mention it. It's a question of territorial gain. But then you have an amazing thing. You don't know what's going on, because the Rambam himself in Mishnah Torah says that the Milchama, it's not dafka Milchemes Mitzvah, Milchemes Rishus. It doesn't make a difference l'chayra. It's al yichud Hashem. So it's a religious war. So how does a territorial gain become religious law? What's going on? Okay, next. Now, here is an interesting thing. The Rambam Minyan Mitzvos, here, let's just see here. Let's just read it because we'll see. Chol mish yoseg ocho v'yivrach kvar over al lo yisaseh v'amo yis'ale lo yisa'aretz mipneihem v'nichbol azhoro v'yoma lo siroum. Okay, those are the two laughing points. So let's see. Lo siroom ki Hashem Elokechem hu hanilcham lochem, v'lo yisaretz b'pneihem ki Hashem Elokecho b'kirbecho kel godol v'neiro. Okay. So this is in Perek Zayin, called Perek Zayin. However, in Mishnah Torah, the Ram has different lavim. And this now will become very interesting. The Rambam's lavim are the hashara of the Mashiach Milchama. V'hoya ki korovchem. This is in Perek Chof, Pasuk Beis and Gimel. V'hoya ki korovchem el hamilchama. You're getting close. It's before the Milchama. You're getting close. Ki korovchem el hamilchama. V'nigash hakoyim v'diber l'am. V'yoma aleim, Shema Yisrael, atem krevim hayoim, v'amilchama krevim hayoim. You're not in Milchama yet, al yevechem, al yerach levavchem, al tirou, v'al tachbezu, v'al tarzu, mipneihem. So, and these are the lavim in the Rambam Mishnah Torah. Let's see. Now, let's go back to what we read before in Perek Zayin Halacha Tesvav. אבל המסחיל לחשוב ולהרע במלחמה, ומבהיר עצמוי אויב בו יסעשה, which לא יסעשה, שנאמר, אל ירח לבבכם, אל תיראו ואל תחפזו ואל תרצו מפניהם. So what are we talking about? The asharas of the Kohen Mashuach Mlchama. So let's go back before we go on. You know, there are 2 points over here that we have to make, and each one's a very interesting thing. So it means that if it's the speech of the Mashuach Mlchama, and that's the lav, according to the Rambam, the lav is not effective yet. He's saying over the lav, but it's before they go into Kishur Mlchama. And then you have to say that the lav is the Lashon Osid. It doesn't mean don't be afraid now, but in the future, when you go into Mlchama, it's don't be afraid. It's al teyech levavchem al tira'u ve'al tachpazu. It's all in the future sense. And it means in the future sense, ve'al tartzu mi'b'neim. You're not mi'b'neim now. The lav is when it's mi'b'neim. So he's saying it now, and the lav is ineffective until later. So that's a very, very important point. So Rambam, in Perek Zayin of Hilchos Melachim Melchamas Halacha Beis, Shtei Pom Medaber Meshuach Melchama Ela'om, Achas Besapa, V'esh Yotzim Kol Meshiach Melchama, Oim Ela'om, V'yoish, Asher Nota Kerem V'lechilo, Kishiyishma Divre Dvorov, Yarzo Me'ochel Melchama. V'achas B'oche HaMelchama afterwards, Oim Al Tira'u, V'al Tachbezu. So it's an amazing thing. You would have said that the Kohen Mashuach is talking about Osid, but he says that the Kohen Mashuach doesn't say this, the Al Tiro ve'al Tachbezu, when they're further away, when he's talking about the Rach HaLevov and the Keren. Let's read it again. Shtei Pomim Medaber Mashuach Melchama Ela'om, Achas B'Sapa. At the border, before. And that's the lav. So maybe Adrabah, it's not Lashon Osid, but it's Chal at that time, but he says it later. So, but I'm still not sure they're ready to go into battle. They're ready to go into battle, and they haven't gone into battle. Does it mean it's chal already? Because the Ram says that if they go out afterwards, that they make shoykov. So we have to know if the lav is b'shas mlchama mamish, or when they're just before they're ready to enter. You have to know if al shem yosid or not. But that's irrelevant. But it said the question is b'shaita when the Kohen Mashuach says it, is the lav chal, or it's only later when they go into. Okay, let's say that to be this way, that way. Now, that's point one. Now there's another point. And see, we have to, before we get started, is the disagreement over here, is the Ram quoting one lav and Mishnah Torah is quoting a different lav, and there's a machlokes. See, it could be, but you just have to ask yourself a question. which let's continue reading. V'nichbal b'zeh, you see in the Ram, he says, V'hu Omar lo yisaretz mipnei, v'nichbal azor v'Omar lo yisiro. Okay, so these are two psukim in Perek Zayin and Vov. However, let's see the next line in Rambam. V'nichbal hatzivui b'zeh ho'inyon harbe. Harbe. Kloima shelo yivruchu v'lo shel yeshuvu lo'ocho be'eis hamilchama. So where is the harbe? What are we talking about, and where are we talking? It's a very important question. And l'cheira, we're talking about the Mashiach Milchama. That's what I would have said. L'cheira. So the question is the Rambam agreeing with what he says in Mishnah Torah that these two things are allowed? And I would say l'cheira, yes. Why the Rambam Mishnah Torah doesn't quote the first two things that you quote here or not, I don't know. But I have a question in general. You see, I was always taught that the mitzvahs are God's words to Moshe Rabbeinu. And here, basically, the Torah has redacted a speech that the Kohen Mashiach Milchama makes b'shas Milchama. And the fact that he says it makes it a law. Well, so the Torah formulated, that's his speech. That becomes a law. That's what's happening. It's an amazing thing. So since the tzivui of Kohen Mashiach, Kefi Pashna Torah, it's kilu, it's a tzivui for Moshe Piagvur, and it's min haminyan. Okay. So then, you see, then I asked myself another question. So I assume then that the Ramban, when he says, or the Ravid that says it's Haftocha, I assume maybe they're learning that the speech of the Kohen Mashiach is also a Haftocha. Atem kreim l'choma al yivechem al yerach levavchem. L'chayrit, it's el yerach levavchem al tiro v'al techbezu v'al tartzu mipeneim. That's Haftocha. Chais, a little difficult. So what's the Ramban's problem? He learns a double portion. It's not the Dvar Hashem to Moshe, it's just the Psukim the Torah, and it's what the speech that the Kohen Mashiach has to have, and if it's not in midst. What's the issue over here? How does the Ramban going to the Ramban and the Ravid? Now, that's one issue that I like to ask. And then, even if you'll tell me, this is the speech of the Kohen Mashiach, it's not allowed. And the other psukim avtochas, okay, say that. So let's open up a chumash, and there's a pasuk in Perek Lamed Aleph. Goes like this: Lamed Aleph Vov, Schizku v'imsu al tirou v'al tartzu b'neim ki Hashem Elokechu aholich imoch lo yapacho v'lo yazvecho. So l'cheira, that I would say certainly an asshole. And the Ramban himself in Chumash interprets its asshole. The Ramban במדבר כ"א ל"ד, נסערו גם בזה, מדעתו שלא ירא משה רבנו מזרוע בוסו, כי אימוי השם אלוקינו, וכל הגויים כי עין נגדי מאפס, וסוהו נחשבו לו. והוא, listen to this, והוא המזהיר את ישראל, אל תיראו ואל תרצו מפניהם. So it's an ashola. So, unless you say, this is Moshe speaking, and it's his own words, and it's not God's words, but then you get a problem. The Ramban says usually what Moshe Rabbeinu is speaking is God's speech, and here it's not. How does the Ramban do this? He himself, Chumash, said that there's a lav. He says, "Wuhu hamazi es Yisrael." Moshe Rabbeinu mazir. That's a lav. And if you don't like that one, okay, so that the Ramban's foolish about. In the beginning of Perichof, the Chayr is another zone. That's the Ramban says harbe. It says like this in the beginning of in Perich Zayin and Perichof Pasuk Aleph, Perichof Pasuk Aleph. He says on Melchama Levecho, V'risa sus v'rechev, Am Rav Mimcho, Le'siro mehem. Ki Hashem Elokecho imcho. It's haftocha you will not, you should not. Imo chamalchem eretz Yisrael l'choyotz ashol. Case. Okay. Now next. Now let's go back to we go before this. It's just there's so many interesting things, Okay. I'm just very confused, the Ramban and the Raib and the Ramban, the Pe'echot, there's no lab, it's only Aftoch. No. Otherwise, that should be the worst Aveir from the Ramban. Now, here is a very interesting line next to that. Avochevo oleinu lizgaber v'la'amoid ulizchazik kineged ha'om ha'acher. So this word chevo is a very interesting word. See, we know lavim is what you shouldn't do. But the Rambam's intermingling, setting up in a lav what you should do, not only what you shouldn't do, but what you should do. And kapach also. Elocheva la mitzalev. There's an obligation to do X. There's an obligation to do the opposite of the lav. That's what it says. In even yeah. In that's kapach, and even Eoiv, his translation is another translation from Kadmonim. Nischayev lahar gila nefesh ba'amida. You rehearse. You do, mental exercises. Ubesyatzvus be'elchei hamilchama. Of a nischayev. So every single one, it's chayev or nischayev. So how does this happen? It's a halav. So I was wondering, this tick me off, and maybe other things will tick me off. Maybe the same way that the Rama brings down many times in Minyan HaMitzvos that we say, Michlal Hein, Ata Shomei Alav, Kohen Gadol, Shuneinu Psula, or we talk about in Mechus Zman. The Rama has it many times in Minyan HaMitzvos, Michlal Hein, Ata Shomei Alav. The question is, maybe we can do the opposite, and we can say, Michlal Lav Ata Shomei Hein, that in a lav you can have a kumbase, that you shouldn't have yil and pachad, but no, you should be strong. Chova. That's what seems to be happening over here. Michlal Lav Ata Shomei Hein. You find the idea Michlal Ata Michlal Michlal Hein Ata Shomei Lav. You find that the Rambam, the Gemara is in the Dorim, Yirav Mebeis, and other places, Sefer Shmini, Parsha Aleph, Perek Av Holochei. But L'chera, in those places, Michlal Hein at the Shomei Lav, it's more. Lav is a shlila, but not kilo nisa say. The Ram only does that. And you also have Michlal Lav at the Shomei Hein, that Michlal a shlila, you can know, because the Gemara is learning in the Dorim, Michlal, excuse me, the Gemara in the Dorim is Michlal shlila, you learn that this is not a shlila. Lo chulin is that it's kodesh. But it's not, you don't learn B'chlal Ashara, Chiyuv, but you learn B'chlal Shlila that this is what we're talking about. When you say Lo Chulin, you mean Kodesh. And we don't find that at all. And that's an interesting thing. We don't know anything about this. But that's the Ram's doing it. I didn't see any of them. See people talking about it. But he says, Chayiv Oleinu. Now, yeah. Obugeni Lamud Shapona Benoseg. Yeah. He says, B'chol mi sheyoseg ocho v'yivrach. That's the way he has it. B'chol mi shepono v'noseg arize overlaces. So it's in kapach, the same type of thing. Okay. However, in Ibn Eoy, it's v'apoich oirev. So he turns around. The question is, you have to run, or he turns around, he's facing the other way, getting ready to run. I'm not sure if there's a big difference, but that's what the words say. So the question is, what's the Isa over here? The Isa over here is the Yira, or the Isa is the Bricha, or it's both. Then we just have to understand what's happening over here. Is and the Ram seems to say it's both. So the question is, what's the tzil? If you do two things, each one itself is also. So, l'cheira, that's a miswondering. Maybe I'm wrong. That the bricha running away is the Maisa Isa. But I assume if he's running away because he's hungry, he's running towards food, or he's running away not because he's afraid. The running away is not the running is also because it's preceded by Yira. That's what I thought the Ram saying. The Is is Livreach Machmas Pachat. Miliro min akif beis machoma shenilch minayim. So I would have said, and that's what I would have said, that according to the Klole Amalkis, that someone who actually runs away, maybe he should be Chayim Malkis. However, maybe there's a difference between the Rambam here and the Rambam Mishnah Torah, because the Rambam Mishnah Torah is mashma that the Isa is the Pachat and it doesn't depend on any Maisa. Because you remember the Lashon of the Rambam in Perek Zayin Halacha Tezvav, B'chol hamaskil lachshay ulaharer b'milchama umavhil atzmoi oivu v'lo yisase shenema al yeoch lebavchem al tiro al tachbezu ve'al ta'atzum b'neihem. So I'm not sure if in Mishnah Torah that there's a Maisa over here. And in Mishnah Torah, we understand why it's not in the Minyan HaLoikim. The Rabbeinu Yoin in Shari Tshuva is mashma like the Mishnah Torah. And Shari Tshuva, Shal Gimel, is Lamed Aleph. He's saying, "B'levov chol rabim agoyim o'el v'meni eicha uchal ha'orishon lo yisiru mehem. He says to Melchama Yevecho v'lisa sus v'rechev am rav v'imcho lo yisiru mehem." So he has Derech Agav, the first pasuk in Perek Chof, Halach pasuk Aleph. Who's halnu b'zeh she'im yireh ha'odom kitzor kleva tia Yeshuas Hashem b'levovoy v'yiftach oleho ke'yin shenema ach koroi v'lireav yishoy v'chein kosuv miat vatiri me'anashiyos. Okay, Beseda. So, but whatever it is, I'm interested here. So, only that he supports the Rambam Mishnah Torah that the Ashora here is not an Ashora of running away. Sheyesh bo Maisa, it's the year and the Pachat itself. Now, let's continue. Let's go back to this point at the end. Because he says here, כלומר שלא יברחו ושלא ישובו לאחור בעץ המלחמה, כי בעניין זה אפשר לקיים אמונס ואמס. There's a religious issue over here in מקיים אמונס ואמס. Okay. Now comes, that's Ibn Tibin. Ibn Eov, ki bezeho inyan, the tochen kiyum das emes. The true religion. And kapach ki bematzav ze efshel kaim as divras emes. And this is the same issue of that you get the impression that and this is in Mishnah Torah also. We saw that Yichud Hashem. We don't understand, at least I don't understand, unless the question is, let's say, Louis Tzur, there's an Am that Shoym Zayim Mitzvah B'nei Noach. And the Melech wants to, extend the territory. So you can only make a war against Kofrim. Next. His boy Mishpli Mitzvah Zo, Bishmini Misaita. Let's go slowly, just a few other points, and then we'll go Blineda on, at least get started in the next mitzvah. The question is, do we know anything here in Rambam that this is Melchemes Rishus? L'cheira, we don't know anything. It could be Melchemes Mitzvah also. L'cheira, case. The Minchas Chinuch, it is true that there's certain dinim that are only Mechames Rishus, but I'm not sure we know anything over here. In Mishnah Torah, I think it's very clear that this mitzvah is, I don't see any reason why it should be no mitzvahs of Mechames Mitzvah and Mechames Rishus. The question is, this lav, is it only in Scholim or also in the Kavis? So, the Minchas Chinuch and Mitzvah Tov Kuf Tov Hey, Ois Aleph, Dimnalu Shelo Raroitz Mipeneim, Zeh Mavur Barama Per Zayim Malachim, Masha Kos Rav Machaber, the Noeg Bischolim, Ki Lohem, Amlochom Bishas, Mavur Barama Per Zayim Kan, the Mechemes Mitzvah Fil Kal Michel Posa, Im Kain, Noeg Benoshim. Ube'ez Hashem Yis'aleh, Oid Lekam, Yispoya Oid Lekam. See here, I'm not sure how important this and this, what Jermaine, what the issue is over here, because we don't know in Kala Mechupasa we have no clue what's the issue over here. Is she going in to fight? Do we have the problem? Is there lovely silbash? Does she fight? Doesn't she fight? Can she fight? No. See, I'm not sure what happens, but it is certainly true that if the women are fighting, so the chayr is alive. If they're not fighting, so there's no lav. The question is, are they coming to fight or are they coming to help? No, it's a question. I'm not sure if you can have clear proofs one way or the other. At least in the Rambam. Now, just to see a sequel to this law, the Ramban knocks this law out, but he has another law. In Shichras Halavim, Loisa se Yud, HaMitzvos Siris, Shenimna Hoish, Hayore, Volach Halebov, Mebo, Bimilchomo, Vuhu lo yuchal, Bitivoy Lamoy Bikisha Milchomo. The problem is, Alach Halebov, who actually fights. He violates a law. This Bikisha Milchomo, Svol, Hamakis, Vacher Vionus, V'yeh Tchilas Mapolo. Because he basically, by fighting, since he knows that he's a Shrachamed, he's going to run. When things get a little bit bad, he's going to bring about the fall of the army. V'yeh tchilas mapola li'am, v'amu yisalu lo yimas es levav echov tilvovoy. So lo yimas levav echov tilvovoy is a lav. V'zeh kosu ba'alochis. Yisreish samach aleph. V'im kein yiyeh al kal yoytzei. O shebo kederech v'lo yochal es b'soroi. V'kach kosu. The Ramban also writes this in his Pirush Torah in Dvarim Chaf. Dvarim Perek Chaf Pasuk Ches. The new lav of Yimas Levavot. In Rambam, however, the Rambam doesn't count the lav lo Yimas Levavot. And so the question is this like a tesis hashara that a person who happens to be Yore, let's say if he runs away quietly and no one sees him run away, so he violates a law of al taltzu, al techbezu, whatever it is, and however people are looking, he also violates, but there's no such law. The Ram doesn't have it. Because we'll see that the Ram learns v'lo yimas as levavoi, he poshit is a shefer dam. See, let's just keep one thing in mind. The Ram Perek Beis of Hilchos V'Yiseich U'Shmiras HaNefesh, the Rambam says that there are two things. There's something called ritzicha. Ritzicha means you're killing biyadayim. And then there's something called gram ritzicha. I cause someone to die. I don't do biyadayim. That's a shefer dam. The question is, the person running away and people being killed because he instills fear on the army, maybe he's a shefer damim. And you look at the Rambam Perek Zayin Halacha Tesvav of Hilchos Malachim Milchamos, he says, "V'chol hamaschil לחשוי ולהרי במלחמה ומעבל עצמו יבלויס עשה שלא יאכל לבבכם על תירו על תכף להתעצם ביניהם ולא יועיד אלא שכל דמי ישראל תלויים בצבורי. He is responsible. He is a shofer domim. ואם לא ינוצח ולא יעשה מלחמה בכל ליבו בכל נפשי הרי זה כמי ששפך דמי הכל. He's killing not an individual but a community, the whole army. שנאמר ולא יימס את לבב אחוב כלבבוי. That's what the Ram learns it. So, and this it's kedai also to look at Targum Yonis and Yerushalmi Yonis over there on this possibly with Levova, but there's a very big difference between the Ramban and the Rambam. The Ramban's learning that this is a lav of the Yirei of Lachlov to go to Muhammad because he knows he's going to run away. And the Rambam learns it's not a lav, it's a statement that if he's going to run away or something like that, this is going to cause him to be a shofer dom. It's not a separate lav at all. It's just a statement of fact. Okay, so I guess the Mitzvah Shem next week will start this shikha of Zera Molek, and I think the important thing there, you should look carefully at the asay and the lav and decide whether it's a mirror image or not, and what the interrelationship between the two are. And then the Ashara Birkas Hashem. And the beginning will be very interesting, the relationship between what Lav Shitten, the Ein Oinshem Masirim, and then the last part of it, about Lav Shabbat and how that plays itself out, is even more interesting. And Mitzvah Hashem will pick this all up next week, Lee Neder.